the world is very different from back when I was applying. Back then, US was the undisputed superpower in the world, and Europe was not entangled in a bloody war, right? Now, one thing remains same, that is Indians love to emigrate, and sometimes I feel it's a necessity also. Like as we discussed in the previous video where I talked about the harsh reality of India, there are factors which compel ambitious Indians to seek a better life abroad. And love it or hate it, some people will keep going and some people will try to demean those people. So those things will continue. So yes, that thing remains same. Indians will keep going abroad. But the thing that has changed is, I think the choice is not as clear as it was back then. One, because India itself is doing much better economically, and so we can afford to be more selective whether we want to go abroad or stay back. So staying back is a stronger option now than what it was back then. And two, because every country has its own problems now, so you need to understand the practicality and the challenges which are involved if you go to these countries. So I know that there are many videos on internet which talk about best country to study abroad, and they will evaluate them on different factors. This is my take on the same question, that if I have to go today, what's the best destination to study abroad? Now this is a very personal question. It depends on your priorities and factors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about each country, give you my view, okay, my opinions and pros and cons that I see, and then maybe that will help you make a more informed decision about it. So let's get into it. So first of all, I really cannot thank you guys enough for helping us cross the 25,000 subscriber milestone. I know it happened a while back, but this is the video I'm getting to talk about it. So when I started filming and posting more regularly around 16 months ago, I could not have imagined that this will happen. So a big thank you to all of you who give so much love and support to our channels. And again, as always, if you are finding the videos helpful or useful, then please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Really helps us a lot. Okay, so now today's video is about best destination for study abroad today, and I'm going to talk about the 5 most popular options, which are US, Canada, UK, Germany and Australia. Okay, so let's look at them one by one. Okay, so US, I've talked so much about US, right? But I think still, if I have to pick biggest pros, then that is insanely high salaries and number of jobs. So I'll just give you some stat around here. The average software engineering salary with 163,000 average salary for a software engineering, US leads in the salary by any metric. Similarly, the number of jobs created in US is again astoundingly higher than anywhere else. Let's take another quick example. There are currently over 9,000 data science jobs available in Canada according to LinkedIn, with an average salary of around 120,000 Canadian dollar, which comes to 95,000 US dollar. Whereas in New York alone, there are over 8,000 data science jobs available with an average salary of $147,000. So this is the disparity you are seeing, that New York has almost as many jobs as there exist in whole of Canada, at least in the field of data science. Secondly, quality of education, research facilities. 33 out of the top 100 universities in the world are located in the United States according to QS World University Rankings. Apart from that, friendlier weather, English speaking country, and most importantly, large Indian community. Like US is the most popular destination for Indians. There are approximately 4.9 million Indians living in US as of 2023, according to I think a report by Economic Times. This makes them the second largest immigrant group in the country after Mexicans. This means that you will find a lot of Indians to socialize with or feel at home with. Now some other stats. So US is by far the most popular destination for Indians, right? So if there are 13.45 million NRIs living abroad, around 4.9 are going to US, then followed by Gulf countries. Now Gulf countries mostly attract semi-skilled laborers. And if you talked about highly skilled workers, then of course US, and otherwise they flock to Europe and Australia. So people like doctors, engineers, lawyers, accountants, they tend to move to Europe and Australia. So US will always remain the popular destination. But let's also talk about the downside, because there are. And the biggest thing is high cost of education. So if you can't get a funding, then cost of education is seriously high, with an average annual tuition fee of around 30 to 64 lakh Indian rupee. Okay, and Ivy Leagues can be really expensive. So cost of education and living expenses are both extremely high, not affordable to everyone. Second point, let's talk about my biggest grudge with US is they have still not changed the number of H1B quota. So there are so many visa hassles for Indians in US. So first of all, there will be a lottery for H1B. It comes down to luck whether your H1B will get picked or not. Then there is a huge wait for green cards, which can induce anxiety, right? So thousands of highly skilled foreign-born workers, including Indians, have lost their jobs recently due to layoffs at companies like Google, Microsoft and Amazon. And according to US media reports, nearly 2 lakh IT workers have been laid off since November itself. So major layoffs going on, and those people suddenly losing their H1Bs, they are now having to leave the country in an unplanned fashion, which no one wants, right? So that is the biggest downside. And then thirdly, there are gun shooting accidents, which can be extremely freaky. There's just no end to that. And although they are random, the number of casualty is low, but it freaks out that why is the country not doing anything about those things. So those are the downsides of US. So to summarize, I would say my conclusion is, if you're ambitious and if you just want to make good money by working abroad for some time, but you're not particular about settling abroad, then US is the perfect country. Go there, work for some time and then come back to India, because India itself is doing great. So I love my journey. I went there, spent the peak of my youth, got a lot of value from there, and now I'm back closer to my family and doing things I like without worrying about visa or green cards. So I think that situation works out very well. If you're open to that, then nothing like US. Then let's talk about the second popular country, which is Canada. A lot of Indians love Canada. As of 2023, there are approximately 1.86 million Indians living in Canada. This makes them the third largest immigrant group in the country after Chinese and Filipinos. Now, so let's talk about the pros, right? The biggest attraction of Canada is its well-structured PR program. So its well-defined path exists to your PR and citizenship, and especially if you study and graduate from there, you get certain points, and within few years you can get the citizenship. So it's very attractive for people who just want to settle abroad, right? In other pros, comparatively lesser tuition fee than US universities. Scholarships and grants are available similar to US, like assistantships are there, and average tuition fee but is slightly lower than US. It's an English speaking country, and very good sized Indian diaspora exists there. So again, you will have a lot of Indian brothers and sisters to fraternize with, and it's really safe and welcoming. No gun shooting, violence kind of, mostly not there in Canada. It's culturally and socially safer than most of the other countries out there. So that is again people who want quiet living, peaceful living, no anxiety, not worrying about safety issues, then Canada is the ideal destination. It's a very welcoming, and Canadians are known to be one of the most polite and friendlier population out there. So those are the big advantages. Another thing, a recent news, so Canada has announced a new open work permit called the Global Talent Stream, which will allow 10,000 H1B visa holders in the US to come and work in the country. If they have a sponsor in Canada, if they have some employer in Canada who wants to hire them, then they can come. The H1B workers can automatically come to Canada, which I think is very interesting and a smart move, because it's a good move to attract highly skilled professionals who are maybe losing jobs in US. So let's see how this pans out. It's very recent news from July 2023. I don't know how it will pan out, but Canada is trying hard to attract this tech and highly skilled talent. So politically, Canada is much friendlier for immigrants rather than US or UK, I would say. So that is again a big positive point for people, international people moving there. But let's talk about the downside, because it's not often talked about. As I made some postings about Canada, I got a lot of negative feedback from people who are living in Canada. They pointed out that it's not as attractive as it looks on social media. There are much fewer jobs and salaries are much lower. So while it is PR friendly, people are really struggling to find quality jobs. So that can be an issue because it's attracting so many immigrants, but maybe the job market is not responding well to that kind of incoming population. So many people are doing this really like low skill jobs, so you may not find very high skilled jobs like you can very easily in US. So apart from that, really horrible and depressing winters. Almost 8 months the country is filled with snow and very very cold, something I don't like, and it can be depressing, not a very good thing for mental health. So if you're sensitive on that aspect, you should keep in mind whether you will be able to fit there or not. It can be isolating and lonely. And costly real estate these days, I've heard like Toronto is going extremely costly in terms of real estate. So that's where Canada is. But if you're hell-bent on settling abroad, then Canada is one of the peaceful and safer location you can find, but you might have to compromise on your career ambitions and salaries. Third, let's talk about United Kingdom. Now in last decade or so, I've seen there's like a lot of Indians are going to these random UK universities and for very random programs like international business or masters in management, and MIM is also gaining a lot of popularity there, and I was wondering why that's happening, and I think now I'm finding the reason. So lately I've been hiring people for our new company, and I've come across a lot of counselors from these VC funded edtech companies, and what they're telling me is that a lot of UK universities are paying commissions to Indian counselors to promote their programs. And they even told me like how in one of these companies, so these companies will charge very low amount to the student, like just 5,000 rupees or something, to help with their full study abroad application, visa application, everything. So it's really cheap, right? But that's because their main money is coming from the commission of these universities. But the sad thing for student is that these counselors will then start pushing these commission wali universities over really good universities. So even if the student profile is good, they will nudge them to apply to these lower tier universities because they will get commission from them. So that is primarily the reason why we are seeing a lot of these unheard of UK universities where a lot of Indians are going. So if somebody recommends you to apply to these unheard of UK universities, then please beware and do your homework first. So I think that is why UK was getting so popular. So please be mindful when you are using services of such companies. Now coming to the UK, one of the really attractive things about UK is there are a lot of scholarships are available. So over to 20,000 scholarships are available for international students according to British Council, and we are seeing a lot of like good scholarships like Commonwealth, Chevening scholarship. Those kind of scholarships are available which can give you full funding covering your living expenses, even airfare for your masters in UK. So if you're getting into a good university and getting that kind of scholarship, it's a great option for sure. Secondly is UK has a lot of prestigious, not a lot, but given its small size, still a sizable number of UK universities rank in the top 10 of the 2022 QS World University ranking. So 4 UK universities are out of top 10, which is a huge deal. So there are fewer number of universities, but some of them are really, really good, of course, like Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial College, etc. Then again, I think relatively easy to settle in UK as compared to US because there is a defined pathway, and especially in my days, like, if you work in UK for 5 years, you could get a PR, and then it was much easier than US, for example. So those are some of the bigger advantages, and of course being a little more closer to India, those are the factors where while Indians love UK, and always I think a historic connection with UK, there is something which fascinates us about London, about UK in general. But let's also talk about the cons, because they can be really high tuition fee. If you do not get those scholarship, then the tuition fee is fairly expensive. Average fee ranges from I think 20,000 pounds to 38,000 pounds depending on the university and course. And currently UK is going through high inflation. Like London is really expensive to live with, also because of the war. And I'm always questionable about the job market in UK. So I see so many people who have done these courses in like 1 year course in international business, could not find a job, are back in here, did some course in psychology, public policy, etc. back in India because they could not find a job. So I never really understand that, like, how friendlier is the job market in UK for international students. So please do your homework before accepting any offer. And lastly, the biggest point is, I think policies keep changing pretty frequently. So for example, as of now, UK does not allow international students to bring dependents in the country. So that can be issue for some students, right? So do check out. Sometimes they act more friendlier. Sometimes they are making these kind of changes. So their immigration policies, how friendly they are for internationals is not really clear. Sometimes they try to really woo them by extending the work permits. Sometimes they're like making moves like this. So it's not very clear. So UK always remains like a question mark for me, So please do your homework before deciding anything about UK. Let's talk about fourth country on our list, which is Australia, and it's becoming an increasingly popular destination among Indians. So let's see some of the reasons for that. Overall, first of all, the economy is decent, great quality of living, very beautiful and English speaking country, right? And although I was not as aware of this, I've always felt that Australian universities are not at par with the US and the West universities. But in terms of rank, they are not that behind. So 7 Australian universities in top 100 exist in top 100 of the QS World University rankings. So I still think the quality and prestige is not as high as US and UK universities, but it's not as bad either. So it's okay. Now the biggest plus point for Australia could be that it's one of the most generous countries when it comes to giving the post-work visa to international students. So let's look at some numbers here. So bachelor students, if you've done a bachelor's in Australia, you can get a 2 years post-study work permit. Masters candidates get 3 years, and PhD candidates get 4 years to work after graduating on the study work permit. Now recently, on top of this, Australian government announced a 2-year extension of the post-study work rights for international graduates with select degrees in areas of verified skills shortage. So for where they're really trying to hire is the labor shortage in their market. And these areas include engineering and IT skills. So in those areas, you can even get a 2-year extension on top of this already friendly study work permit. So with this extension, which is I think going live in July 2023, now bachelor students will get up to 4 years, masters will get 5, and PhDs can stay in Australia and work there for up to 6 years, which is very generous for any country. And also they also follow a point-based system for PR. Like if you apply for a temporary grad visa, you can apply for a permanent visa after you have completed 2 years of full-time work in Australia. So check these out because these keep changing. But yes, I think there is a friendlier path towards PR and citizenship in Australia, which is one of the reasons why many Indians are also preferring that. Let's talk about the downsides. And here I think in COVID times, they pissed a lot of people because they had such strict visa policies, no flights coming in, going out. Many students were stranded there, not able to get help or see their families, especially when Indians were struggling in the second wave. So that pissed off a lot of people. Other than that, I think distance from India is huge. It's far from everywhere. I lived in US, it was far from there. It's far from India. So the homesickness can start building there. But I think that's part of the study and living abroad experience anyways. And now I think some cities are becoming quite expensive. Sydney is very expensive. Melbourne is expensive. So high cost of living there. But otherwise, good country overall, and I see a lot of Indians going there. I also feel slight racism there. It's very Chinese dominating. A lot of Chinese people go there because of the proximity, I feel. And overall, I think thoda sa racism towards Indians can exist in certain parts of the country, but then that's true in other countries as well. And let's talk about the final country in our list, which is Germany. And the biggest plus point is zero tuition or very subsidized tuition fee, as like public universities in Germany do not charge a tuition fee and have so with a very limited budget you can study in very good universities in Germany. That's why it attracts so many lower middle class Indians, right? So, and it's pretty strong it's known for engineering and technical programs. So if you're in one of those fields and you don't want to spend or don't have a fortune to spend, I think Germany is such a no-brainer to apply. But the downsides are also there, which you should be aware of. Like if you want to live in the country for long term, then I think you should be familiar with German as a language. So language barriers can be there. You will find English spoken courses where the medium of instructions is English, but day-to-day conversations are still going to happen in German. And if you do not know how to speak at all, then you will find yourself socially isolated. And in undergrads, at least, the medium of instructions is German in many places. And for undergrads, I think you have to anyways do a 1 year extra study there, because Germany follows 13 years of schooling as opposed to 12 years of schooling that we follow in India. Another thing is, especially in war, Germany has been battling high inflation, like really crazy inflation, and living expenses in certain cities like Munich and Frankfurt is shooting through the roof. People are really struggling to just afford the day-to-day expenses, basic expenses. Apart from that, also there is job scarcity and salaries are low. So salaries are really low if you compare with America's, US, and other places. So you will have to compromise on salary, but you're not spending much and you're not earning that much either. So that is the compromise. And overall, I have heard from my professional colleagues that German are not very friendly and outgoing people, and you will never be fully accepted into the society as one of their own. So that kind of cultural isolation is felt more in Europe, particularly in Germany, than as opposed to US, Canada, UK, for example. One positive point about Germany and Europe overall, I would say, is that because of the hiring regulations are such that they can't lay you off easily. So laying off is extremely tough. This is why you are seeing that same companies are doing such massive layoffs in US, but they are not able to lay off the workforce in Europe because of very tight regulations. So you have more job security in Europe and in places like Germany. Okay, so those were the main countries, and quickly let's talk about Singapore also, which I feel is a attractive option given its proximity to India. It's a growing economy, overall very safe. Like there's absolutely no drugs in the whole country, and campuses are smoking and alcohol free. So very health conscious, very friendly in those terms. But the biggest downside is that it's very unlikely that you will find a PR, especially if you're going for a master's or just going to work there. You are most likely not going to get PR, so you can't settle there. Then there are Ireland and some other European countries that some people go to sometimes. There are both again pros and cons there. So as always, there's no one perfect destination. You will have to compromise on something. So decide on what matters most to you, and then which destination is going to give you the best experience in that factor, right? So overall, I feel if I want to go study or work abroad for some time and I'm ambitious about my career, but eventually I want to come back to India, I think nothing like US. Because its biggest downside is the visa and green card issues. But if you don't care for them, then US can give you extremely attractive career opportunities. But if settling abroad is your main priority, I would look at Australia, Canada, or UK. And if cost is your biggest concern, then Germany is your friend. You can study there in as low as 10 lakh rupees, right? So which is a huge deal. But in all these countries, you will have to compromise on salaries and number of jobs. So you may not get the kind of job you want to do, and you will definitely not get the salaries that we hear of in the US. So there's always a compromise. Decide on what matters more to you and go for it. Don't listen to everybody, because everybody is telling you what works for them. I'm telling you what works for me. If it does not work for you, you do not have to follow my advice, right? So take everything with a grain of salt. Do your own research, because things keep changing a lot. As I said, world is changing very fast. So keep updated and then make an informed choice. So that's me signing off. I hope you like this video. It's not going to please all the people, and I know I'm going to again get some hateful comments in there, but it's okay. If you have some good information which I have missed out on in this video, then please do share in the comments below. I would really appreciate that. Alright, so let's meet again next week. Until then, take care, and I hope you're enjoying the weather. Bye bye.